It's the Criterion. It's the Criterion. 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 Criterion.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Criterion Project. This is the podcast where we talk about a film that is streaming on the Criterion channel, and it's a lot of fun. I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and normally I'm joined by my friend Conrado Falco, but he is busy filming a web series this week, and so he is not available for this episode, but I'm really excited to have a guest host today in Griffin Schiller from Film Speak on YouTube. And Griffin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the invite. I'm very curious what this web series though your co-host is recording. That sounds important.
I know. No one will be more curious than I will be. Conrado is a very creative person, so it should be a lot of fun.
Sure.
It's gonna be intriguing. It's taking up basically this whole week,
Wow.
So if not longer. But yeah, you said he was working at an ADR this very morning for it. So
wow.
Yeah, we'll have more news when we hear about it.
Sure. Yeah.
That's one nice thing about this whole mess that's happening is that I think it has inspired some people to think outside the box and use their creativity, which is nice to see.
Yeah, no, I agree for sure. It's definitely because with people involved in the journalism, film criticism space and stuff like that, it's like the routine is, new movie's coming out this Friday. All right, get the screeners or go to the press screenings, go see them. Or if you can't do that, go to the night before, go see the movies, review them, and then it's just sort of like a rinse and repeat cycle. But now it's, obviously you can still get screeners. Online for all the films coming out on VOD, but for the most part, you gotta step up your game a little bit and do some different things. So you're right, it is sort of a nice opportunity to exercise creativity in different ways.
Yeah, one of my friends just on his Insta story did this whole little Rambo movie with him and his kids, and it was the cutest thing.
Oh, that's
I mean, not that the kids know what Rambo is, but it was really fun.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's been nice to see.
Yeah.
And people trying to come up with creative solutions here in Utah. We have one regular drive-in theater, which is amazing, and that's been, I think it's one of the oldest drive-in theaters in the whole country, the Redwood Drive-In.
Yeah.
But then we also had this other one called the Water Gardens, which was a regular indoor theater that they had enough space around the theater that they created their own drive-in.
Wow.
For this time to keep their employees working. And I really admire that, not only to provide a service, which is desperately needed, but also to, like I said, to keep their employees working and in a safe way. And I think it's really cool. It's a small screen, but if it offers them another opportunity to be creative and have a business, and then also keep some semblance of the theatrical experience alive, I think that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I know. It's interesting when I actually go back maybe in a couple of years and watch something like Valley Girl, which I saw at the drive-in.
Yeah.
Well, I was charmed. I thought it was cute. I liked it. But I'm like, how much of that was that I was like, new movie in a theater. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I had the same reaction when I think I saw Artemis Fowl, which isn't a good movie, but I was watching it and I was like, I kind of see what they're doing there. Okay, the world building is nice, and it's realistically, it's just probably an awful movie, but I wasn't in the camp who thought it was the piece of abysmal trash that everyone else seemed to. So
yeah, I thought it was messy.
Oh yeah,
it was very messy, but yeah, I mean, I can see what you're saying. Yeah, and that it's something that feels like a Disney release was very comforting in a way, even though it wasn't very good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's well, this feels like I like it. It's a new movie with a new world, and it's whatever. But it's not a good movie. But
yeah, it just was too much exposition.
yeah,
I couldn't excuse not that we need to talk about. I couldn't excuse Irresistible though, even at the drive-in. That was very disappointing.
yeah.
But at least I've had some movies that I've been able to see, which I've been grateful for because of those drive-ins. But
yeah,
and I
yeah,
got to
for sure.
I got to see. We usually talk about what we've been watching on the Criterion channel and otherwise, and at the beginning of the show.
Uh-huh.
And the same night, the double header at the drive-in that I saw Irresistible, I got to watch Jaws.
Oh, that's
And
fun.
so-
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So that was quite the contrast. And that was just amazing.
yeah.
It did my movie heart good.
I watched that pretty recently. Not at the drive-in, just on the just on TV and whatnot. But it's I always love revisiting that movie like a couple times a year, maybe once a year or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but seeing it on the big screen, I've always wanted to go to those screenings that they do in Texas. The Alamo does when it's like out on the water or something like that. That's just like, I don't know how I'd feel about it. I'd probably be very unsettled by it, but it also seems like it'd be a lot of fun. So
I think so. I think it would be really fun. I love shark
yeah.
movies. I mean, obviously there's lots of terrible ones, but there's still sometimes the terrible ones can still be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think.
No, yeah. Like it's, you know what you're gonna get, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I only watched one other film since we last had an episode on the Criterion channel, and that was I watched The Devil and Miss Jones.
Okay.
With the part of the Jean Arthur collection, and
Gotcha.
I didn't love it. I was expecting to. I love her. I think she's brilliant. But I don't know. I just didn't think it was that funny. And so I don't know. Maybe I was just in a bad mood. Because it has great reviews. People say, how subversive it is. And I don't know. It just didn't do much for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen that one personally, but I don't know. Sometimes you'll watch a movie on there and you're expecting one thing, and then it just sort of, it doesn't pan out the way you hope. But
I did see, though, it's not on Criterion channel, but I saw the movie What She Said, The Art of Pauline Kael. This is a documentary about the film critic Pauline Kael. And as a aspiring female film critic, she's definitely an icon and somebody that I really admire. And it's just a normal documentary. It's just a famous person documentary with talking heads and whatever. But because I'm so interested in the subject and the person, I really enjoyed it. And I highly recommend anyone who's interested in this space to watch it, because the thing I admire the most about her is that she was just so strong and never apologized for her strong voice. And even when she had very unpopular opinions, and sometimes I feel like, I need to kind of, in an effort to sort of listen to other people, I need to kind of apologize a little bit, and I have to always kind of stop myself from that and just be. And yes, you should listen to what other people have to say, but you shouldn't make that impact your own voice and who you are as a person and as a critic. And so I really admired what she had to say and her as a person. So I recommend checking it out if you have a chance.
I guess I'll have to add that to the queue of everything.
Yeah.
that sounds awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So what have you been watching? Anything on Criterion channel or that our listeners might be interested in?
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, I watched La Haine for the first time with Vincent Cassel. It's a French film that it's sort of in the line of like Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee. It's in black and white. It takes place in like the projects outside of Paris, and it follows these three guys kind of like going around after like during the aftermath of a riot, and it obviously tackles a lot of social issues, police brutality, prejudices, not only from a racial standpoint, but like classism, talks about like some like toxic masculinity and stuff like that. It's just really, and by the time it ends, it has just one of the most like it has such a gut punch of an ending. I was just kind of like rocked after I saw it. So I think it's an incredibly powerful movie. I was very moved by it, and I can't recommend it enough to a lot of people out there. I also got like shades of uncut gems from it, just from like just the interactions between the people. It just felt very authentic and true to the culture and whatnot, and to that community.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, I again can't recommend that film enough. I watched that like a couple of weeks ago and I loved it.
Cool. I haven't heard that one. That sounds really good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's dive into Watership Down. And this is one of the few films, animated films, that is in the Criterion collection. I think there's only 3 that are official Criterion releases. There's Watership Down, there's Fantastic Planet, and Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Okay.
And as far as I know, I might be missing something, but yeah. So this film is definitely very unique. And what were your overall thoughts about the film? Did you think it was successful?
Yeah, I really liked it, surprisingly. Like I had no idea where this was gonna go, like right off the bat, but like it's just one of those films that's just like I'm kind of shocked. I'm shocked that it exists, and I'm really happy it exists, because I think, and you know, watching the Guillermo del Toro thing after that, watching him talk about that, I kind of I understand its importance now. A lot of people, and I think he even said this, a lot of people view animation as a genre just made for kids, and this film really kind of flips that notion on its head, and shows, you know, what you can do in animation for a more mature audience. And so yeah, I was I really dug it. I thought it was, I mean, it's kind of like a weird little movie that tackles a lot of heavy themes, and has a lot to say. Whether or not the author intended it to say those things is another thing, but yeah, no, it's a great little film.
Yeah, I'm so glad you liked it. Yeah, I had read the book previous to my seeing this film for the first time. And so I loved the book. It's one of those rare books that I read in high school that I still loved, even after reading it in high school, because usually that saps all the joy out of it.
Yeah, right,
and
right.
The thing I love about the book, and I also love about this movie, is that it has so many different layers.
Yeah.
So like this movie, you can appreciate it for its metaphorical significance. You can appreciate it for its, you know, its messages. You can appreciate it for its characters. You can appreciate it for the animation, for the lore that it develops, for the world building, for the there's so many different ways that you can look at it, and so I feel like it's something you could continually kind of revisit and have a different experience every time that you watch it. And as much as I love the medium of animation, because so many of the films are made for children, I feel like many of them, or made for families, they don't have the layers that this movie has. And
Sure.
And that you can kind of look at it from a spiritual perspective. You can look at it from a social perspective, from a political perspective. And I think that just makes it a really, really cool film and a really cool experience. And just the risks that it takes for the violence and or things is just really unique and different. And so I really, really enjoy it. And I think the thing that Richard Adams does so well in his novel is really creating distinct voices that you are really rooting for and that you empathize with immediately, particularly for Fiver and for Hazel. And I think Hazel is kind of your Samwise of this world, and you just feel so much for him and empathize with him. And he's kind of like, similar to me to Nausicaa. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, I haven't.
The anime, but Nausicaa is a very gentle leader.
Yeah. Well,
And
that's what I like, because they kind of go back and forth between like him and then I forget the rabbits, the one that had the hair, the one that began with B, the B.
The Bigwig.
Yeah, a Bigwig. Thank you. Yeah, it's like it kind of goes back between the two of them and the contrasting styles of leadership if you will. Obviously, you know, Bigwig being a little bit more tactical and like confrontational and whatnot, and then like Hazel, obviously, like you were just saying, being the more gentle leader, and then kind of carrying that throughout, you know, other aspects of his life as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what did you think about the animation itself, the visual style of the film?
I think it's a really beautiful movie, but I do think that it is also in that weird time of animation where it's like they're like a lot of things are gorgeous, and the if you were to look at stills of this film, it would be beautiful, but in motion some of it's a little jagged. I think, you know, there's some like technical, you know, the technology wasn't quite there at the time, and so that's why you get it feels very gosh, what's the right word? I guess I don't know, you can feel that like a person made it. It's very like handcrafted, I guess you could say.
Yeah. In the Del Toro piece, he says, whenever there's a technical flaw, you can feel people trying their best.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way of putting it. I think, because it does feel like very yeah, you can feel the artistry, but like the people behind it, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. I especially just love the whole. I mean, it's horrible, but it's so visually striking. The whole scene when the rabbits are being killed out of their tunnels, and you see
the like fever dreamish, like the flashback sort of retelling. Yeah, that's like it's really dark. It's really disturbing. It's heartbreaking for sure. Yeah, and I love how they decided to do that. It was just it's super effective.
Yeah, what do you think about the whole the cowslip warren where there's the seemingly perfect where they're getting fed all of this food, and yet there's this something really creepy about this whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's like from the second that happened, like when that rabbit kind of like told them to come over into their hole and everything. It was like I thought that was gonna be where they like try to eat them or something like that. You know, like it just felt very. Yeah, like the whole tone, the atmosphere was really off. It was like I don't know, maybe it was just me sort of like trying to interpret it, but there was like a cannibalistic vibe from the other rabbits. Like they were like telling them these things, and it just it was really unsettling. And I think I can't remember for sure, but I think there's like a lack of music in that section, and it kind of reminded me of the bit in the Deathly Hallows in Harry Potter where they go to Bathilda Bagshot's house and he's trying to get the information out of her as to like, you know, Dumbledore and all this stuff like that, and then it turns out to be Voldemort's snake. There was just sort of like that very eerie, and it was just, you totally knew something wasn't right from the get-go, but like you had to watch how it played out because they were being offered all of this bountiful meal and stuff. So yeah,
and I feel like if that was done now, they would have a harder time being as kind of vague about it, you know, like as far as if you're going to have a message about socialism and about things being too good to be true,
right.
Kind of that kind of ideology, that it would just be so heavy-handed that it would lose all of its efficacy. But this, you can just take it as a scary place if you want, or you can have a discussion on what is he trying to say. And especially when Bigwig gets caught in that snare, I think that whole scene is so tense.
Yeah,
what is going to happen?
Yeah, that for sure is one of the most, out of like probably all the scenes in the film, that to me might be the most effective scene. Just because there's an urgency, but like everyone's moving really slow, and then also I don't know, just like how visceral it is from an animation standpoint. It like the blood, like it's one of the most gruesome. Like I think Del Toro literally said the same thing, but it's like it's one of the most gruesome, just like sequences that I've ever seen in animation for sure. But it's real and it's unflinching, which is this movie as a whole. So like it makes sense why that would be there. But it's yeah, it's a nail biter, that sequence. It really is.
Yeah, it really is. But I think the thing that makes me like this movie more than some dystopian type stories or this type of stories is that I feel like this movie, you never lose hope, as dark as it can be.
Yeah.
Because I think because of Fiverr as a character is a very hopeful character, and he can always see that the land with the land on the mountain,
Yeah.
and the peace and hope that's coming. And so I think, unlike other movies that I struggle with a little bit more, like I'm not a huge Hunger Games fan. I didn't really like it. And those kinds of stories to me are just so cynical and don't have the hope that I need in a story. And so I think that you get that here. And then of course they learn about the destruction at Sandalford. And that, like we said, that's sort of the most haunting animation. You've got the rabbits with the red eyes.
Yeah.
And it's in those tunnels and they're being gassed, and it's a really quite gripping.
Yeah, no, for sure, and I think it's a good point that you bring up, because I mean, essentially, if you want to look at it if you want to just strip it down to the bare bones, it's about these rabbits trying to survive with the entire world out to get them, and they're just being like hunted in every, part of this little bit of land that they're on, and this part in England and whatnot. So like, you're right, it could have a very cynical outlook. It could get overly dark really fast, but it doesn't. You're right, it does. There's like levity, in moments. The stuff with the bird was funny. I thought he was a nice addition to them, and it just added it for a movie that isn't really a fantasy. Like, it's a fantasy, but like it takes place in our world. Like, it's very realistic and grounded. It's not like these rabbits are like wielding swords or whatever.
Right. It's
happening in our real world. It's just they have different ways of like framing this stuff. But yeah, I liked that that it did feel like a fantasy despite its realism.
Yeah, because they have it grounded in our world. They talk about humans, that they won't rest until they've spoiled the entire earth and those kind of things, but yet they have this whole lore of the El Hira, and that they start out the movie with. So it kind of gives a mythical quality to it. So you're right, it kind of straddles that line really in an interesting way, I think. And so then we get to meet Woundwort, who is basically like the dictator, the fascist of the story, and he refuses to relent any kind of control at all, because if he does, then the whole system will break down that he's kind of crafted for himself. And they're able to escape, but they go back because they realize they need the dose in order to have a functional civilization. And so then they go back, and there's basically your battle until they're able to bring the dog. Even though Hazel offers peace, he tries to get peace with Woundwort. He will not relent. Yeah,
right. Which, I mean, that's, again, just kind of emphasizing the, how Hazel is just, he's good. Like, he would let whatever happened in the past just happen in the past. He's just like, look, if we can work together to, create a better place to live for everyone, like everyone can be here and it can be a free world, let's do it. And obviously the dictator does not take kindly to that, but I did like the sequence with the dogs. It was, you felt the urgency, the tension, but it was like it also showed just like how cunning the rabbits were, you know, not the dark rabbits or whatever, but the regular ones,
Right.
And how they just like, because obviously at the beginning they're talking about the gifts that the gods basically gave them or whatever. So it was just a showcase and kind of like they're, you know, yes, if they're caught they'll be killed. They're defenseless more often than not, but they're also smart. They're fuck, I can't say. I can't. Sorry, I can't. They're tactical. They're anyways,
Yeah.
it showed that they, you know, they can fight with their
strategic.
brains.
Yeah.
They're strategic. They can fight more with their brains than they can their you know, their physical attributes. So it's like while when you look at it at the surface, yes, the world has given them a giant disadvantage. When they work together and use their brains, you know, like great things can happen.
Yeah. You mentioned the music or lack thereof in one scene. I do love the music, and in Bright Eyes is the standout song, Art Garfunkel, and I think it's really, really beautiful, and it captures I think the tone of even though there are the violent scenes. To me, this movie still maintains a hopeful tone in its overall tone, and so I really like that. And Del Toro calls it it's a miracle. It's a miracle, a fantastic accident of wonderful minds colliding.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, because I believe this was that first, what is it, what's the name of that studio?
UPA. Yeah,
this was their first movie, correct?
You know what, I'm not positive. I'm going to learn more about UPA because I want to talk about it in my obscure animations series that I do with my friend.
Yeah.
Because I'm very interested in it.
Okay.
But I could look it up, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, I may have misread it, but I thought that it was its first animation, and so it's like you're definitely still ironing out the kinks and whatnot in terms of style and the technical aspects. But for a first film right out the gate, it's such like a confident and you know, strong statement on just multiple things, but also just like, this is who we are as an animation studio. I think that's really powerful, you know?
Yeah, agreed. I definitely agree. All right. Well, let's go through our little questions that we have. So
Sure.
What do you think makes this a Criterion film?
I just think that it's one of those rare animation films that isn't afraid of being, of engaging in a conversation with a more mature audience. I think it tackles many different things, whether intentional or not. Obviously, you can read up in the author, it was like, well, I didn't really have these allegories in mind when I'm making it, but it's really easy to draw into those. You know, you could look at it as like these rabbits fleeing Nazi Germany, or like Stalinism, especially because I believe the author served in the military at one of those parts. I could be misreading something, but so you can look at it as that. Again, yeah, they touch on like social issues, just the innate evil of mankind, you know, and just like all the destruction that they cause. I mean, forcing these rabbits out with, you know, and cutting down forests and stuff like that. So, like, yeah, there's a lot of thematic material you can draw upon. It's also just like unflinching in the way that it tackles those themes. It's violent. It's scary. It's very real, and I think it's just it's one of those weird anomalies that, you know, I'm glad that it exists, but it clearly, I don't think could happen again. And like you've seen other films like inspired by it. Like I think the closest thing that I've seen, I mean, I don't even know. If you want to go more modern, like a Coco is very mature in the way it handles adult themes, presents it to a younger audience, but it doesn't have the teeth that this film has. And I think because this film has those teeth, excuse me, it sets it apart. So if I had to venture, I guess that would probably be why.
Yeah. I think, frankly, most of the the masterpieces of animation aren't available to the Criterion Collection. So what are you going to pick? You're going to pick something that is super unique, super authentic, very well loved by people like Del Toro, very influential. So I think it makes sense that you pick this for a Criterion release. It's also very indie. It's very different, and so I think if you're talking about what is sort of a modern day descendant of Watership Down, I don't know, maybe something like Anomalisa.
That would be the closest I can think of, because you're right, because that is like an animated film made for adults. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're probably right, but then again, I don't know. There are some Studio Ghibli films that, they're obviously geared for a family, but they are they take a more mature and thoughtful approach to the storytelling, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just you won't find that sort of thing with Disney or Pixar, right? Or like even DreamWorks to some extent, and definitely not Illumination, dear God. But but like yeah.
I mean, the closest Disney probably got is something messy like Hunchback of Notre Dame, maybe.
Yeah, honest to God, I agree. That is probably the closest that they've ever gotten, and I can't see them making a film like that ever again.
No, I don't think so.
Unfortunately.
So it's really interesting. So we have this pretentiousness scale, 1 to 10. 1 being not pretentious at all, 10 being it's a Godard film that you can't understand. So where would you rank this in the pretentiousness scale?
I mean, I don't know what number I'd give it. I don't think it's very pretentious. It's very confronting with what it's trying to say, but at the same time, you can also just view it as this movie about a bunch of rabbits going on an adventure and trying to survive, and you can still take a lot out of it. I'd probably say, I don't know, maybe like a 2 or a 3. I don't really think it's all that pretentious, but I guess because of the abrasiveness of it, I could see some people saying that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I would give it more like a 6. I think it's a little, because of the lore and the frefra and some of the stuff like that, I think it's a little pretentious. But in a way that I enjoy it. So so I'd give it that. All right, then our last thing that we talk about is we do what we think would be a good remake for this film. And they did a remake of it in 2018 with the BBC, and I didn't really enjoy it very much. I didn't really think the animation was terrible. And the voice cast was fine, but I don't know, it was frustrating. I can't even remember anymore why I disliked it so much, but it was so forgettable that
I didn't even know that it came out until like you told me that it came out, and then also I don't know, I'd find it hard to believe that it has the I don't know, I feel like it's a little restricted in its storytelling, like it cut back on some of the maturity.
Yeah, I think the way that I would do it if it was me is I would have Leica do it. I think they're the obvious choice. That you make it a stop motion film, and I would do a pretty close remake. And I think if you that you could capture really cool effects. If you did some of the same things they did with Kubo, but make it this story, I think it could be really interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do agree with you. Leica is, I think they are the obvious choice, and if not Leica, then I don't know. Maybe Studio Ghibli decides that they want to do an adaptation of this book for whatever reason, and they're like, you know what, we're gonna put our style on it and do this thing and make it our own. But I would never in a million years see them doing that. But yeah, so I think if you get someone like a Leica doing that, they're not afraid to go places. They can be mature with it, but obviously I guess still accessible to a younger audience. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know exactly how they would, because on one hand I'm like, okay, we'll go with the original intent of the novel and just make it, take the restrictions off, just make it a mature animated movie. But then on the other hand, I don't know how many mature audiences are going to go see this film about a bunch of rabbits trying to survive. Like, yeah. It's from a marketing standpoint, it's very difficult. But yeah, I don't know. I think the closest I can get to like how to adapt it would be to, like you said, stick close to the source material and just have a studio that's willing to take risks do it.
Yeah, it would be really cool when you have all these streaming services. If there was one of them that wanted to, invest a little bit into a either stop motion animated film for a more niche audience, like that's the hope I kind of have with these streaming services, is that maybe you might be able to greenlit smaller projects that and there'd be an audience for them in a way that was difficult before. But we'll see. We do have a remake suggestion from our friend Conrado of what he thought. Put that in.
Hi everybody. I'm sorry I can't be there for the full discussion, but I did want to phone in with my pitch for a remake of WATERSHIP Down. You see, last year we saw the revolutionary new cinematic art come to us right at the end of the year. I am talking, of course, about the digital fur technology used for the movie Cats. And that's exactly what I think we should use for a remake. So I'm thinking WATERSHIP Down, but done in the same style, with the same digital furs and weird animal bodies with human faces, no genitals, of course. Directed by Tom Hooper, starring Ian McKellen, Judi Dench, Idris Elba, Taylor Swift, Jason Derulo. Can't forget about James Corden and Rebel Wilson. Those guys are so funny. So, I think this would work. Maybe you could even make it a song and dance sort of thing. I'm pretty sure you guys will agree with me. This is definitely the way to go.
I think what you got to do is just keep the characters, the heart of the characters.
Yeah.
And do something interesting with the animation. I definitely do not want to see it with real bunnies.
No. Oh, no, yeah. And I don't want to see
Lion King ain't.
No Lion King. I don't want to see it like that. I don't want to see it in 3D. I'd rather see it in like a stop motion or 2D, even though no one does 2D animation anymore, sadly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, very good. So our next episode, we are going to be talking about the Charlie Chaplin classic, The Kid. And so that will be really fun. Conrado will be back, and that's his pick. So it will be a lot of fun. So if you have seen WATERSHIP Down, please let us know what you think, what your interpretation it is. What do you think of the animation? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section or on Twitter. You can follow us at Criterion Pod and give us your thoughts. We would love that. And Griffin, where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can head on over to the FilmSpeak channel for interviews, movie reviews, live streams, and all that good stuff. And then you can also follow me on Twitter at Griff Schiller.
Great. And all that will be in the description section. You can follow me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So please check that out. I would really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. And you can find Conrado at Coco Hits New York on Twitter. And so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And we'll see y'all next time. And enjoy your Violent Bunny movies.
Yeah.
On the Criterion channel while you still can.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.